The alien spaceport was alive with movement, glowing lights, and voices from hundreds of species blending into a strange melody. The air smelled of oil, spice, and ozone as ships landed and lifted off one after another. Security officers in dark armor stood tall at every corner, scanning crowds with sharp eyes. To them, today seemed like any other day, until a figure stepped through the main gate. It was a young human woman, slender, calm, and strangely fearless as she moved among the alien crowd. Her dark hair brushed her shoulders, her eyes held quiet strength. She walked as if she belonged here, even though humans were rare in this sector. But what drew every eye was not her. It was the group that followed behind her. 6 alien cubs walked in her shadow, their fur sleek and striped, their glowing yellow eyes sharp and unblinking. They were not harmless children. They belonged to the Vrakkar, a predator race feared across the galaxy. Even grown warriors gave way when Vrakkar packs walked past. But here were cubs, predator young, padding silently after a fragile human. Murmurs spread through the station like fire. A traitor hissed, "Why are they with her?" Another whispered, "It is impossible. Vrakkar cubs follow no one, not even their own kind unless blood-bonded." Eyes widened, fear and awe mixing in equal measure. Security reacted quickly. A squad of guards moved forward, their weapons ready. Their leader, a tall reptilian officer, raised his voice. "Human, stop where you are. Why are the Vrakkar cubs with you?" The woman paused. She did not look frightened. She did not run. She simply stood as the cubs gathered closer to her legs. One of them growled low at the guards, baring tiny fangs in warning. The sight made even the armored officers step back a pace. "They are not with me because I command them," she said softly, her voice calm. "They are here because, see, they choose." The crowd gasped. Her words were strange, almost unbelievable, for in this galaxy, loyalty was built on power, control, and fear. But her voice carried none of those things. It carried only certainty. The head of security narrowed his eyes, his scaled tail lashed against the floor. "Do not speak riddles, human. Vrakkar cubs cannot be tamed. If you have used technology or mind tricks, you will face trial. Surrender them now." The woman's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. She bent down and touched the head of the nearest cub. The creature purred, leaning into her hand. Its siblings pressed closer. Their small bodies formed a shield around her ankles. "Do you see?" she whispered. "They protect me of their own will. I did not ask. They decided." A silence fell, broken only by the restless crowd whispering. Some looked angry, others amazed, and some deeply afraid. The guards did not lower their weapons. The alien officer snarled, "You will come with us, human. The council will decide your fate." The woman did not resist as hands gripped her arms, but when they tried to pull her away, the cubs hissed. Their eyes glowed brighter, sharp claws scratching the metal floor. The guards stiffened, not daring to strike young Vrakkar. To harm them would mean war with their kind, yet the cubs refused to let the woman be taken. "Move," the officer barked, "or we will use force." The woman's calm voice cut through the rising tension. "You cannot make them obey, because they do not obey. They choose, and they have chosen me." The words hung heavy in the air. They were dangerous words, words that challenged the natural order. In this galaxy, the strong ruled the weak. The Vrakkar were predators, humans were prey. Yet here stood a human woman, guarded by predator cubs who had decided she was theirs. The officer's jaw tightened. He ordered more guards forward. The woman was pushed toward the interrogation wing, but the cubs followed in a tight pack, their low growls echoing through the chamber like thunder. The crowd parted as fear rippled through the bystanders. As they entered the chamber doors, the officer spat, "When the council hears of this, you will answer, human. Do not think your calm words can protect you." The woman only whispered back, her eyes steady, "It is not words that protect me. It is choice." The heavy doors closed, leaving the crowd outside buzzing with shock and fear. Rumors already spread about the strange human, about the cubs who had chosen her, about the meaning behind her calm words. None knew what would happen next. But all felt something had shifted, something in the balance of power. The cubs pressed against her as the guards led her deeper into the station, their small eyes glowing, not with fear, but with unshakable loyalty. The woman placed a hand gently on one cub's head and whispered again, not for the guards, not for the council, but only for the young at her side. They don't follow, they choose. The chamber was dark, walls made of cold steel. Only a single light hung above, casting sharp shadows across the table where the human woman sat. Her hands rested calmly on the surface, though heavy cuffs locked her wrists in place. Across from her stood 3 alien security officers, their armor gleaming under the light. Their leader slammed his clawed hand on the table, his voice sharp. "Tell us the truth, human. How did you gain control of the Vrakar cubs? What device did you use? What trick hides in your clothing?" The woman raised her eyes, calm but steady. "I used nothing. I gave them no orders. They are not controlled. They choose to stay with me." The officers hissed among themselves. One scoffed. "Lies. A prey specs. It cannot bind predator young. It is unnatural." Another leaned closer, his breath hot. "Do you not understand the danger? If those cubs belong to the Vrakar clans, their families will demand your head." Before she could answer, a low growl rumbled from the shadows of the chamber. The guards froze, their glowing eyes turned toward the floor near the woman's chair. There, pressed against her feet, were the cubs. Somehow, they had forced their way past the outer guards. They sat with teeth bared, protective. Their growls filled the room. The lead officer cursed. How did they get inside? Restrain them. But when 2 guards moved forward, the largest cub leapt onto the table. Its tiny claws scratched across the surface, fangs bared. The guards stumbled back, weapons raised. The woman's voice cut through the chaos, calm and firm. "Do not touch them. They act on their own. They will not harm unless you harm me." The officers hesitated, sweat shining on their scaled skin. They had trained for war, for pirates, for smugglers, but none had prepared for Vrakar cubs defending a human. "Explain," the leader demanded, voice shaking with anger and unease. The woman leaned back, her eyes remembering. Her voice softened, carrying the weight of memory. "It began on the mining moon of Delros. I was working with a salvage crew. We heard the screams of metal tearing. A shaft collapsed. I rushed before anyone else moved. There was dust, fire, and cries. And when I pulled one small body free, I saw him, the first cub." She looked at the largest cub now crouched on the table. Its glowing eyes met hers, filled with trust. "I did not think, I only acted," she continued. "I carried him to safety. I wrapped him in my own coat. He was weak, frightened, but he clung to me. I thought it would end there, but it did not." The cubs pressed closer as she spoke, as if they remembered too. "In the days that followed, the others found me. One by one they came. They sat near me, followed me when I moved. They watched me with eyes too old for their age, and then they never left. I did not call them. They chose." Her words echoed in the chamber, soft yet unshakable. The officers stared at her, unease crawling through their scales. The Vrakar were predators who respected only strength, yet these cubs showed loyalty to something else, to something deeper. The lead officer snarled, slamming the table again. "Enough! You think your story will save you. You think the council will believe this foolishness. They will tear those cubs from your arms and give them back to their kind." At his words, the cubs growled louder. One even leapt down in front of her chair, teeth bared at the guards. The sound made every officer take a step back. They were children, but they were Vrakar, even young. They could rip through flesh in seconds. The woman did not flinch. Instead, she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "They are not possessions to be given or taken. They have already made their choice." The chamber door slid open suddenly. Another officer entered, breathless. "Sir, the council has been alerted. They demand to see the woman at once and the cubs as well." A heavy silence fell. The lead officer's tail lashed with fury. "Good. Let them see this abomination. Let them decide her fate." He pointed at her, claws gleaming in the dim light. "You may believe you are safe, human, but when the council sees you, your words will mean nothing. They will break this illusion." The woman's eyes did not waver. Her voice was steady as the cubs pressed against her legs. "It is no illusion, and when they see, perhaps they will understand." The guards unlocked her cuffs, but kept weapons aimed at her as they prepared to escort her. The cubs walked in perfect unison, Foreman, a protective ring around her as if guided by instinct, not command. The officers whispered to each other nervously, shaken by the sight, as the chamber doors opened again and the group marched into the wide halls of the station. Crowds gasped and whispered. News had already spread, and now hundreds of eyes watched. The human and the predator cubs walked side by side, an image that challenged every law of nature in the galaxy. The woman raised her chin, silent but resolute. Around her, the cubs growled softly, their loyalty unshaken, their choice undeniable. And somewhere deep within the halls of power, the council waited, ready to judge, ready to condemn. But perhaps, unknowingly, ready to witness something greater. The grand chamber of the council was carved from black stone, its walls lined with banners of alien empires. Each banner carried centuries of history, blood, and law. Above them, glowing crystals cast pale light that made the hall look like the inside of a cathedral. The crowd had already gathered, delegates from dozens of species filling the seats, their voices buzzing with anger, disbelief, and fear. At the center stood the human woman, surrounded by 6 predator cubs. They sat at her feet like guardians, their glowing eyes sweeping across the chamber. 1,000 voices fell into silence as the council leader, a massive Vrakar elder with silver fur, stepped forward. His gaze locked on the cubs, then on the human. Human! His voice echoed like thunder. Our kind does not follow prey. Our cubs do not bond with outsiders, and yet before all of us they sit at your side. Explain this violation of nature. Explain why they guard you. The woman lifted her chin, calm as ever. There is nothing to explain. They are here because they want to be. I did not force them. They chose. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. Some hissed in anger. Others muttered in confusion. The Vrakar elder bared his fangs. You speak of choice, but choice belongs to the strong. You are weak. Your species is weak. How can cubs of hunters see strength in you? The woman's voice carried steady, because strength is not only claws and teeth, strength is also in protecting, in loyalty, in sacrifice. They saw something you cannot see. Her words were simple, but they cut through the chamber like blades. The cubs growled softly, as if agreeing. The alien delegates leaned forward, whispers spreading again. One counselor slammed a fist on the desk. This is dangerous. If Vrakar cubs turn to humans, then the order of the galaxy collapses. Today it is cubs. Tomorrow it may be soldiers. Another shouted, remove the cubs. Place them back with their kind. The human must be executed before her influence spreads. The cubs snarled at the voices bearing tiny fangs. The crowd shifted uneasily, for even young Vrakar were fierce enough to wound. Yet none of them attacked. They stayed close to her, never leaving her side. The elder raised his claw for silence, his silver eyes narrowed. Words are wind, human. You speak of choice, you speak of strength, then prove it. We will not accept stories. We will see truth. The chamber trembled as a door opened behind the council, revealing a massive gate. Chains clanged, and the sound of a beast's roar thundered through the air. The crowd gasped. The elder's voice thundered again. You will face the trial of loyalty. If the cubs stay with you in danger, then perhaps you speak truth. But if they run, if they abandon you, then you are nothing but a liar and a thief. The guards stepped forward, ready to drag her toward the gate, but the cubs blocked them, growling low. The woman raised her hand gently, and the cubs calmed. She whispered softly, It is all right. We will go together. The crowd's whispers grew frantic. Some laughed cruelly, expecting her to die within minutes. Others whispered nervously, fearing what might happen if she survived. The gates creaked open, and a hot wind rushed into the chamber, carrying the stench of blood and fire. From the darkness behind the bars came glowing eyes, larger and more deadly than the cubs. A predator beast, fully grown, its claws the size of swords, stepped forward. Its roar shook the air, shaking banners on the walls. The council elder smiled coldly. Now we will see the truth. The woman walked forward slowly, the cubs following without hesitation. Each small step echoed in the silent chamber. The delegates leaned forward, unable to look away. She did not show fear, though the beast's shadow towered over her. At the edge of the trial pit, she paused, turning to face the council. Her voice rose above the silence, clear and strong. You call me weak. You think choice belongs only to the powerful. But you will see now that even your strongest cannot break their choice. With that, she stepped into the arena, the cubs padding close behind. The gates clanged shut behind her, sealing her inside. The predator beast roared again, its eyes blazing with hunger. The cubs growled back, their tiny voices filled with defiance. The crowd held its breath, waiting. The council watched with cold judgment. The woman stood tall, her hand brushing the head of the nearest cub, her heart steady, her voice calm. They don't follow. They choose, she whispered once more. And as the beast lunged forward with thunderous force, the cubs leapt to her defense. The arena floor was covered in cracked stone and scorched sand. It smelled of smoke and old blood. The walls rose high above, lined with spectators who had come to see the human die. The roar of the predator beast echoed through the chamber, shaking the stone underfoot. The creature stepped into the light, its body massive, scales gleaming black, its claws curved like blades, its jaws dripped with venom. It was bred for war, bred to test champions, not fragile prey. The crowd leaned forward, their eyes hungry for the kill. The human woman stood calm, her shoulders straight. At her feet, the 6 cubs formed a circle, their small bodies pressed together, their glowing eyes fixed on the beast. Not one of them backed away, not one whimpered. The woman whispered, "Stay close." And though her voice was soft, the cubs growled as if answering her. The beast lowered its head and charged. The ground thundered as it moved. Dust exploded beneath its claws. The crowd roared, expecting to see the human crushed in an instant. But as the monster lunged, the cubs reacted with ferocity. They leapt forward in unison, tiny claws scratching across the beast's snout. Their roars were small compared to the giant, but filled with courage. The crowd gasped. The cubs were not running, they were fighting, they were protecting. The woman did not move to command them. She only placed her hand against the stone wall to steady herself as the beast shook its head wildly, trying to fling them away. One cub was thrown to the ground, rolling across the sand. The beast turned toward it with jaws wide, but the woman stepped forward without hesitation. She rushed between the beast and the fallen cub, arms spread. Her small frame was nothing compared to the monster towering over her. The crowd screamed, expecting to see her torn apart. The beast lunged, but before it could strike, the cubs attacked again. They sank their claws into its legs, biting, clawing, roaring with all the fury of their kind. The beast howled, stumbling as the cubs fought with desperate strength. The woman knelt quickly, gathering the injured cub into her arms. She whispered, "I am here. I will not let you fall." The crowd fell silent, their eyes wide. They had never seen Vrakkar cubs defend anyone this way, let alone a human. The counselors whispered among themselves, some pale with fear, others with anger. The beast shook the cubs free and turns. At its eyes back to the woman. Its venom dripped on the sand, sizzling as it burned holes into the ground. It roared and charged again. The woman did not step back. She only held the cub tighter and whispered to the others, "Together." At her voice, the cubs moved as one. They leapt again, not scattered but in formation. Their small bodies struck the beast's throat, its eyes, its legs. The monster stumbled once more. Its massive tail whipped out, striking the wall, sending cracks through the stone. The woman stood steady, her eyes locked not on the beast but on the council above. Her voice rang out strong enough for all to hear. "Do you see? I did not command them. I did not order them. They fight because they choose. They fight because their hearts are free." Her words struck the chamber harder than the beast's roar. Some in the crowd shouted angrily. Others were silent in awe. The council elder's silver eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, watching every move. The beast staggered, bleeding from its leg where the cubs tore into its flesh. It bellowed in rage, lifting its head high to crush them with one strike. But the cubs did not scatter. They pressed closer, snarling, covering the woman's body with their own. The woman knelt in the center, arms wrapped around the injured cub. She whispered again, her voice calm despite the chaos. "They don't follow. They choose." The beast roared, its voice echoing like thunder across the arena. Then it collapsed to one knee. Its wounds were shallow, but its spirit faltered under the defiance of the tiny pack. The cubs howled together, a sound that filled the arena with defiance and raw power. The crowd was no longer roaring for blood. They were silent, shocked, some even trembling. They had seen something no law of the galaxy could explain. Predator cubs fighting for a human, not by chains, not by command, but by choice. The council elder rose from his throne, his silver fur glowing under the light, his voice cut across the silence, cold and sharp. The trial is not finished, the beast is not slain, and neither is your fate, human. We will see how long this illusion lasts. Guards moved along the walls, preparing new dangers. The trial was not over. Suspense thickened in the air, yet the woman only pressed her forehead against the cub in her arms, whispering softly as the others stood in defense. No matter what they bring, we will face it together. The cubs growled as one, their eyes burning like stars. The beast staggered back, blood dripping across the cracked stone. The cubs circled tighter around the woman, their growls filling the arena. Above them, the council chamber shook with noise. Some shouted to end the trial, others demanded more. The air was thick with tension. The woman knelt in the center, cradling the injured cub in her arms. Its breaths came shallow, its eyes dim. She whispered to it softly, her voice trembling yet steady. "Stay with me, little one. I will not let you go." The crowd leaned forward, waiting for her to shield herself, to use the cub as protection. But instead, she laid her own body over it, her back exposed to the raging beast, her arms wrapped around the tiny creature, as if her fragile form could block the monster's strike. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Never in all history had prey put itself before predator young. Never had anyone seen such an act. The beast roared, raising its massive claw. Its shadow fell over her small form. The cubs leapt desperately, biting and clawing, but they could not reach in time. The claw came down like a blade. The strike landed. The stone cracked. Dust filled the air. The crowd screamed. When the haze cleared, the woman was still there, her back torn, blood running down her shoulders, yet her arms held the cub tight, not letting go. The cub blinked weakly, then pressed its small head against her chest. A sound rose from its throat, not a growl, but a soft cry. The other cubs howled in unison, their voices wild, fierce, filled with rage. They threw themselves at the beast with a fury no one had seen. Their claws sank deeper, their fangs tore harder. The great predator stumbled, caught off guard by the storm of tiny bodies. Its balance broke. It fell against the wall, howling in pain. The arena shook as its massive form collapsed. The cubs did not stop. They clawed until the beast lay still, its eyes dim. The crowd was silent. The arena was filled only with the sound of the cubs panting and the woman's soft breaths. She looked down at the injured cub, smiling through her pain. "You are safe now. All of you are safe." The counselors stared in shock. Their laws, their beliefs, their very nature had been shattered in front of them. One whispered, "It cannot be a human." Protecting. Vrakar young. Another slammed the desk, his voice breaking. "This is wrong. This is dangerous." But the elder with silver fur did not speak at once. His eyes narrowed as he watched the cubs gather around the bleeding human. They licked her wounds, whined softly, refusing to leave her side. They had not only chosen her, they had claimed her. Finally, the elder stood, his voice echoing across the chamber. "What we have seen is no trick, no device, no illusion. This is the truth of choice. The cubs have decided where they belong, and she has bled for them." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some shouted that she must be killed before her influence spread. Others argued that to harm her would be to dishonor the cub's will. The air was heavy with division. The woman raised her head, her voice weak yet clear. "You do not understand. It was never about control. It was never about fear. Humanity is not strong because we dominate. Humanity is strong because we protect, because we care even when it costs us. That is why they choose. That is why they will never leave." Her words carried a weight that silenced the crowd again. Even those who hated her could not deny what they had seen. The cubs pressed against her, one licking the blood from her arm, another curling at her knees. Their loyalty was beyond instinct. It was a bond forged by trust, not by chains. The elder spoke again, his voice heavy. "The trial is finished. She has proved her claim. The cubs chose freely, and she chose to suffer for them. This cannot be ignored. But not all agreed. In the shadows of the chamber, other counselors whispered, their eyes burning with anger. If humans can inspire loyalty in predators, what else can they do? What will happen if their kind spreads this belief? They are too dangerous. The woman, bleeding but unbowed, looked up at the High Council, her voice steady even through pain. You fear me, not because I am strong, but because I showed you another way. You fear the truth that your power may not last forever, because choice cannot be chained. The chamber fell into silence once more. The cub's soft growls echoed in the quiet. The delegates stared, torn between fear and awe. Above them all, the council elder's face was unreadable. His silver eyes shone with conflict. Behind him, shadows of rebellion began to stir among those who could no longer deny what they had witnessed. The woman's whisper rose again, calm and unshaken despite her wounds. They don't follow, they choose. And in that moment, even her enemies felt the tremor of something greater, something that could change the galaxy itself. The arena gates slammed shut. The beast lay dead on the stone and the woman bled quietly as the cubs circled her. The silence that followed was heavy, like the calm before a storm. For a moment, it seemed as if the trial had proved everything. But then the voices of fear began to rise. From the council chamber above, one alien delegate shouted, "This cannot stand! If the cubs stay with her, they will grow to defy their own clans. Humanity will infect them with weakness," another hissed. "No, not weakness. Something worse, loyalty to prey. If this spreads, the balance of the galaxy will fall." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some aliens leaned forward with awe, others pulled back with hatred. Fear is a powerful thing, and fear was spreading faster than truth. The elder with silver fur raised his hand for silence. His voice was calm but iron-hard. "The trial is finished. The human has proved her words. The cubs have chosen her freely. It is not for us to break that choice." But the chamber exploded with defiance. A faction of counselors stood at once, their robes sweeping the stone floor. One shouted, "If she leaves here alive, more will follow her. More will question the old ways. We cannot allow this. We must strike now." The guards stiffened, their weapons raised. Some pointed at the cubs, others at the human. The air grew sharp with danger. The woman rose slowly, blood staining her torn clothes. The cubs pressed against her legs, growling low. Their small bodies trembled with rage. She looked at the guards with calm eyes and said, "If you fear me so much, then I am already stronger than you think." Her words struck like fire. The guards hesitated. The crowd fell silent again, but the counselors of the angry faction stepped forward, their voices sharp. "Seize her. Take the cubs. Break this illusion before it destroys everything." The first guard moved closer, his weapon glowing. At once the cubs leapt in front of the woman, their teeth bared, their eyes blazing. The growl that rose from their throats was no longer childlike. It carried the sound of something ancient, something untamed. The crowd shivered at the sound. The woman placed her hand gently on the head of the largest cub, her voice soft but carrying through the arena. "I told you, they don't follow, they choose, and now they choose to fight you." The guards froze. The fear of Vrakar Young was carved deep into every soldier. To harm them was to invite war with their clans. But the counselors of the faction hissed louder, "Do not fear cubs, strike now." The standoff crackled like lightning. One wrong move would turn the arena into a battlefield. Then from the shadows above, another voice spoke, calm but sharp. "Enough." The crowd turned, and from a high balcony, a figure stepped into the light. It was the Vrakar Queen, her towering form draped in silver armor. Her presence silenced even the loudest voices. Her eyes glowed like fire as she looked down upon the scene. The counselors who had demanded the human's death bowed, their anger hidden behind clenched teeth. The elder lowered his head in respect. The queen's voice filled the chamber, slow and commanding. "I have watched long enough. I have seen the cub's choice. I have seen the human bleed for them. I have seen the truth, and truth cannot be silenced by fear." The crowd held its breath, waiting. The cubs pressed closer to the woman, their small eyes locked on their queen. For the first time, even they bowed their heads but did not leave the human's side. The queen's gaze sharpened. "The cub's choice is sacred. To tear them away would dishonor our kind. Any who raise a weapon against them, raise a weapon against me." The council chamber erupted. Some shouted in protest, others bowed in silence. The faction that demanded the woman's death glared with fury, but none dared to defy the queen openly. The woman stood tall despite her wounds. Her eyes met the queen's, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. The queen's words protected her. But the danger had not ended. In the shadows of the chamber, whispers of rebellion grew louder, counselors plotting, soldiers exchanging sharp glances. Fear had not died. It had only gone underground. The queen raised her arm. Take her from this place. Give her care. The cubs remain with her, for they have chosen. Let all the galaxy remember what was seen here today. The guards lowered their weapons. The crowd parted. The woman walked slowly, the cubs flanking her like loyal shadows, her body weak, but her spirit unbroken. As she left the chamber, the whispers followed her like knives in the dark. Whispers of danger, whispers of war, whispers of an empire too afraid to accept change. The woman touched the head of the smallest cub and whispered, her voice soft but steady, "This is not the end. They fear us now, and that fear will not rest. But we are together, and together we cannot be broken." The cubs pressed closer, their growls echoing down the stone halls. In their glowing eyes burned loyalty and fury, and in the hearts of those who watched a terrible truth settled. The galaxy had just changed, and no power could return it to what it was before. The woman walked through the stone halls of the council fortress, her wounds still bleeding. The cubs pressed tightly around her. Behind them, guards followed in silence, fearful but watchful. The crowd outside had not left. Thousands of voices filled the plaza, waiting to see what would happen, waiting to see if the human would live or die. When the great doors opened, light poured over her. The cubs stepped out first, their glowing eyes scanning the crowd. Then she appeared, weak but unbroken. Her presence alone silenced the chaos. For a moment, the entire square held its breath. Whispers spread like fire. The human survived, the cubs fought for her, the beast fell before them. Some whispered with awe, others with fear. The galaxy's oldest truths were unraveling before their eyes. At the balcony above, the Vracker Queen stood tall, her silver armor gleamed like fire, her voice carried across the plaza. "Today, we have seen a truth no law could deny. The cubs have chosen a human, and she has chosen them in return. This bond is sacred, and none may break it." The crowd erupted, some with cheers, others with shouts of anger. The factions divided in an instant. Soldiers from one side raised their weapons. Soldiers from another blocked them. The entire square trembled on the edge of civil war. The woman stepped forward, her voice soft but somehow carrying above the noise. "Enough!" the cubs growled, and the sound cut through the air like thunder. The crowd froze, eyes locked on the fragile human who stood at the center of everything. She raised her blood-stained hand. "You fear what you do not understand. You think the cubs are mine, that I have taken them. But you are wrong. They are not mine. They are themselves. They chose me, just as I chose them." Her words fell heavy on the square. Her voice did not rise in anger. It did not tremble in fear. It simply spoke truth. And truth was more dangerous than any weapon. One counselor stepped forward from the shadows, rage burning in his eyes. "Lies! A human cannot change the order of the galaxy. You are nothing. You must be erased before your poison spreads." He raised his hand, signaling to hidden soldiers in the crowd. Blades of light ignited, weapons aimed at her heart. The cubs snarled and pressed close, ready to strike. The crowd screamed. Chaos threatened to explode. But before the soldiers could fire, the queen herself leapt from the balcony, landing with a thunder that cracked the stone beneath her. Her massive form stood between the woman and the blades, her eyes glowed with fire as she spoke. "Any who strike her, strike me, and I will crush them." The traitorous soldiers froze, their courage burning away. The loyal soldiers moved in, surrounding them. In moments, the rebellion was crushed beneath the queen's fury. The counselors who plotted shrank back in silence, knowing their time was over. The queen turned to the woman, her voice low but heavy with respect. "You bled for the cubs and they bled for you. You showed us that strength is not only in power but in sacrifice. This lesson will not be forgotten." The woman bowed her head slightly, her voice calm. "I did not seek to teach. I only protected what chose me." The cubs pressed against her legs, their eyes locked on the queen. The queen studied them, then raised her hand high. Let all races hear this. The cubs have chosen. Their choice is sacred, and this human stands under my protection. The plaza shook with the sound of voices. Some cheered, some wept, others whispered darkly, but none could deny what they had seen. A truth had been carved into the galaxy that could never be erased. The woman walked slowly through the parted crowd, the cubs at her side. For the first time, no one tried to stop her. No one dared. She passed through in silence, her steps steady, her head high. Behind her, the whispers grew into legend. Across the stars, stories would spread of the human who stood before predators, of the cubs who chose loyalty over instinct, of the queen who bowed to a truth greater than law. In the quiet of the plaza's edge, the woman knelt, placing her hand on the head of the smallest cub, her voice soft, almost a whisper. They don't follow, they choose. The cubs howled together, their voices rising into the sky. The sound carried far beyond the walls, beyond the city, beyond the planet. It was a sound that echoed into history, and in that moment the galaxy changed forever.